is take a picture of this whole audience and send it out on Twitter to your governor and to the president. What do you think?
Cool.
Why don't we get everybody? This is a very skinny and wide room, so can everybody from the sides just come and flood the center of this space here, and we'll take a nice picture here in Nashville. We're gonna send it out saying we're from Nashville. We're not from Gasland. What do you think? That's a great idea, right? Okay, so this is Lee Zishy. She's the grassroots coordinator for Gasland. We've been taking these pictures all across the country and all across the world. We'll show you a few samples in a second. And we're going to tweet that out to the president and to your governor. Hold on, I'm going to get the picture myself.
Should we put up a hand gesture or something?
Oh, wait. Okay, so just a stretch. It's a long movie. Just stretch yourself out. Put up one hand in the air. Put up a peace sign. Put up a fist. No lewd gestures. Know how you feel. But let's just do this. This looks great. This looks awesome. Right, I'll be right there.
We're going to take two. So
We're going to take two.
For a little while. You know, activism takes a lot of work. So, do you want to get in there? Okay. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And one on the iPhone. Repeat it out.
You've been with his Facebook post.
1, 2, 3. Awesome. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much. Here's Lee to give you some instructions about what you guys can do with that photo.
So we'll tweet it out. I don't do it right now, or I'll do it as soon as I can, depending on, let's see if I have internet signal, so you can just, obsessively stalk our Twitter feed and toads up. Our Twitter handle is Gasland Movie. So definitely retweet that. We've been taking these all over the world, so the more you retweet it, the more that message is getting out to Barack Obama. He can see, how many people are sending that message to him. Also, please check out our website. It's Gasland the Movie. So our Twitter handle is Gasland Movie. Add the word "the." That's our website, Gasland the Movie, and check out our action pages. There's more tweets you can send to Barack Obama. You can sign up to get updates from us. This story is ongoing. The stories in this movie have changed dramatically since the film have come out. So we want to keep you updated, let you know what you can do. We're connected with different grassroots groups across this whole country, so we'll keep you updated on what you can do. There's also a chance to donate to us too. We're a grassroots group. HBO paid for the movie to be made, but they don't pay for us to come here to share this movie, and we need to keep going. If you saw this and you think other people need to see it, go on our website, donate $5. So please retweet the picture. It's Gasland Movie, and again, our website is Gasland the Movie. So thanks so much for coming out. We really couldn't do this without you. So thanks.
I'm going to just show you some of the other pictures, but I can't find them. But Lee might be able to pull them up on her computer if she has a second. Also, so we're trying to also we send out as many DVDs as we possibly can, so that you guys can screen the film in your communities, all across Tennessee or wherever. Host a screening. So you write to Lee, and that's screenings@gaslandthemovie.com, or just go on the Gasland the Movie website, and you see there's a screenings page there, and her email address is there. So if you want to host a screening, we'll send you the DVD. It's free, except you have to pay for postage. And then you can just host a screening for your community. That's the way this grows. That's the way this moves forward. That people, we're fighting oil and gas companies that have trillions of dollars. They're the most profitable corporations in the history of corporations, in the history of the world, in the history of money. And the way we fight that, and we've done a lot of things very, very successfully, is neighbor-to-neighbor conversations and communication. Hosting this in your own community matters so much. Especially, we also have a screenings guide that you can download there and talk about the specific issues. And I want to really thank so much the organizers and welcome them to the stage now to help me with this Q&A, so they can fill you in on things that are happening locally. Amazing. So we can have a discussion here about how you can get involved. But that's the most important step. This is a thing that's happening. When this happened to me, it was extraordinarily isolating and extremely scary. And I had no idea what to do. I felt like, after I had the correct information, which was that this is devastating to rural communities, it's devastating to suburban and urban communities, that this is something that is a grave health risk, that it devastates forest areas, wildlife areas, wetlands areas, watershed areas. I didn't really know what to do. And now 5 years later, after, you can put it in this one.
Yes.
Oh no, on your computer. Yeah. After having, the film has premiered in 30 countries, the first film, and seen by 50 million people worldwide. This film is on the track to do the same thing. There is this enormous community of people working on this all across the United States. When we toured in Europe, we have 9 countries right now that either have a ban on fracking because of activists, because of citizens, or are working on it. And I mean Netherlands, France, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, Spain, Poland, a whole bunch of them. It's really quite active. So there's brothers and sisters working on this all across the world. And when you're involved in this movement against fracking, you start to learn about, the other forms of extreme energy, like mountaintop removal, which you see the Last Mountain t-shirt right here, that is extremely devastating, and you're seeing this all across Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, or deep water drilling, as you see in the beginning of this film, an unprecedented danger to the Gulf and to other waters now. We're looking at the Arctic for that. Tar sands development, a lot of you have campaigned against the Keystone XL pipeline. These movements are coming together, and there is an incredible community of people working on this, some of the most amazing individuals I've ever met in my life, and it stops feeling so lonely and isolated. It starts to feel like what you're doing is working on the future of really our civilization. Because as we look at what's going to happen with climate change unless we stop using fossil fuels, as we look at all of the waterways and all the watersheds, all the pristine, beautiful areas that are on the chopping block because of extreme energy development, we realize that this is the fight for our future. It is the fight for the future of our ability to have clean water, to have clean air, to have a stable coastline, to have all the things that we take for granted when we're talking about civilization. So I'm really glad that you guys are all here with us tonight. These are some of the pictures from around the tour. That's, I believe, is that Santa Cruz? Or is that Dallas? It looks like Dallas to me. Oh, well, Lee will work on that. So you'll see some of the pictures from all around the country and around the world for Gasland too. And we've been sending these out on Twitter. All right, well, that's, there's some of them.
California someplace.
No, that was Santa Cruz.
Santa Barbara. Yeah,
Santa Barbara. All right. Well, she's still working out. So why don't we start and take some questions. Whatever you have to either ask myself about fracking, about the film, about what's happening with our democracy, or local questions of how to get involved right here, right now, and what are the issues facing Tennessee for these wonderful folks. That's in France.
Yeah.
That was an unbelievable moment. So let's have some questions as Lee's scrolling through the picture. Here's one right here.
Yeah, just since you finished the film, can you give us an idea of what positive motions or movements have occurred in fracking in our country?
That's a great thing to ask. Thank you so much. The first thing that happened after the film was released was 10 days after the film was released, 100,000 acres in my backyard in the Upper Delaware River Basin in Pennsylvania were canceled.
Woo.
So it was like, I didn't stop crying for like a week. It was unbelievable. So the property across from my land, which you see in there, and all the land in the Pennsylvania Delaware River Basin was released. It was like unbelievable. We were in shock, and the company just tail between their legs. It was Hess and Chesapeake and Newfield disappeared, walked away. And that was because of the strength of the resistance in that area. We had a political moratorium starting in November of 2011, which we had fought very hard for, but then they left. 13,000 acres of leases in New York, in a nearby area in Broome County, also then were released by Chesapeake. So where citizens are really pushing, it works. We still have no fracking and drilling in New York State. And that is directly because of the movement, citizen movement in that state, which is very, very strong. Like I mentioned earlier, we had 100,000 people sign a petition to Governor Brown starting Californians Against Fracking, asking for a ban on fracking. A week ago, we submitted, along with Move On and Credo Mobile and a whole host of other organizations, including Americans Against Fracking, which you should look into because that's a national organization, and Food and Water Watch. We submitted 250,000 signatures, 250,000 signatures, on a petition to President Obama and the EPA to reopen the investigations in this film. 3 weeks before that, we, with the same group of organizations, submitted 650,000 signatures on a petition to ban fracking on public lands, which is something that very much affects you here in Tennessee, so you'll learn about. Did you hear about it on the news? No, you didn't. I was checking my email on AOL the other day, and I saw on the front, you know, they give you the news scroller on the top. There was a man in China who had a car accident, broke his nose, and he was growing another nose on his forehead. The two-nosed Chinese man was the top of the news ticker, and he was in the photograph. He was like checking his phone, like, "Would you please stop taking pictures of me? I can't stand it anymore. I have two noses on my face." And that was the top story. 650,000 Americans signing a petition to Barack Obama to ban fracking on public lands. Nothing. Chinese man with two noses, all over the news. This is a problem, and in a lot of ways, we as citizens we have to take up the slack. We have to go ahead, and you have to. You want to change the world? You just talk to the person sitting next to you at dinner, sitting next to you at lunch, sitting next to you at breakfast, sitting next to you in the office, online, at the bank, or wherever it is. You have to be able to say that, because we have to be the media right now, and that's what I discovered. So, you know, there's enormous positive action. Ban on fracking in the Netherlands just went through a week ago. Something in South Africa, we've got a continuing moratorium, and yet there's a very strong fight over there. So there's something going on some part of the earth every day of the week, and a good place to find out about that stuff is the Gasland Facebook page. There's 100,000 people on there, and they post all the latest news. So if you want to get both encouraged by the positive and deeply discouraged by the horrible things that are happening, at least you're informed of them. We were in Arkansas 2 nights ago learning what was going on with this Mayflower spill, and looking at all the fracking issues, earthquakes in Arkansas. These things continue to be incredibly devastating. And the bad news is that when we win in New York, it gets worse for you here in Tennessee. When they win in Vermont, it gets worse for us in Pennsylvania. So the real important thing here is that we have to bind this whole thing together nationally. And what I'm asking people to do in the future, in the springtime, it's possible that Illinois will be opened up for fracking, and the first rigs will start rolling into southern Illinois. It's not that far from here. You know, it's the president's backyard. And I would like to have a bus from every single state in the union show up in Barack Obama's backyard and say, "This is not acceptable." So when you sign up at gaslandthemovie.com, we're going to give you information about that. We have maybe an email a week or every 2 weeks with blog posts from Lee or from myself with updates from people in the film. You're going to learn what happened next to Calvin Tillman if you sign up there. When you get those emails, and there's that call to action, whether it says come to Southern Illinois or come to Washington, D.C., we cannot let this president off the hook. We cannot let him just not meet with the people in the film and meet with the gas industry and have that dominate the conversation. So thank you. There have been so many amazing victories. There's so far to go. But we're going to keep you abreast of when it's time to take a stand and how we can all participate in doing that. Because this is a team sport. You know. Thanks. Here's a question.
When you look at this systemically, it really is all about getting money out of politics.
Sure.
So to what extent are these movements that we have going already focusing on that?
It's a fantastic question. Inequality in our society is also at the root of this, I think. There's a new movie that's coming out actually, or came out last week, called Inequality for All, which talks about the gap between rich and poor in America right now at an astounding rate. That 1% controls so much of the wealth and power in this country, and everybody else is just fighting for all the scraps that they leave behind. That stresses out our entire nation. It makes people susceptible to leasing their lands when they wouldn't do it ordinarily because they're so broke. And I saw this happening, the predatory leasing following the predatory lending that bankrupted people in the banking scandal. But the money in politics issue is so paramount, and we're working together with good government groups like Common Cause that you see in the film, supplying a lot of statistics about lobbying. And this is paramount, because all these issues, whether you're concerned with fracking or you're concerned with climate change or you're concerned with the food safety, all of these things, or the healthcare system, all these things stem back to the fact that at this moment there's unprecedented corporate involvement in our government that's outsizing and overwhelming the citizen's voice within the democracy. when we look back 100 years from now at this period of history, we will see that this is the moment of corporate dominance of the United States of America. If we don't break that cycle, we won't have 100 years from now to look back at. Florida will be underwater, our coastlines will be unstable, we'll be in a perpetual state of emergency with respect to climate change. But it is those corporate interests that are controlling this conversation, and these two issues go hand in hand. And when we were working on this film really isn't about water and air contamination. That was the first film. This film is about the contamination of democracy, and you know, there's so much more to do on this issue. So, you know, it's a great reminder that we have to start to bring this not from just the environmental community, but also from the good government community. Right now, there is a motion to get money out of politics for a constitutional amendment, and I'm gonna. The website is escaping my mind right now, but I'm gonna tweet it out. What's that? Move to amend. There's move to amend. There's another one though that we've been working with, and I will make sure to send that out on Twitter. But I totally agree with you. All these things come back down to that. Sir?
Yes, you mentioned democracy. Can you give any indication about the work that Thomas Lindsay in the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund?
Sure.
Does that intersect with what you're doing?
Okay. There's an organization called CLDF, Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. They've been incredible. The guy who I work with is named Tom Price, and you mentioned Lindsay. They go from town to town, and they outline for you as you go to your city municipal planning boards how to outlaw fracking on a town-by-town basis or county-by-county basis based on human rights. And they develop that ordinance with you so that you can go in and you can convince the legal system within your municipality that this is an assault on human rights. I would encourage you, if you're really concerned about what's going on in your particular area, to get in touch with CLDF, Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. I've done a lot of screenings with them, and they've been extremely effective in Pennsylvania. They wrote one of the ordinance that got the fracking ban in Pittsburgh. They've got, you know, dozens of bans in New York State, and these are at the town or county level. So they're willing to work with people. You guys are in the Marcellus Shale. You have other issues unrelated to Marcellus Shale but related to drilling. I would highly recommend going to that website, CLDF, I think it's CLDF.org. CELDF.org, and hooking up with you guys to talk about how to get these things done on a local band level. On one level, this is a turf war, right? The oil and gas industry has leased more land than the total land area of California and Florida combined, which means that all the adjacent properties in all those places are also affected. So think twice that in the United States of America. CLDF is trying to get some of that back under the control of the citizens. So I think it's a great suggestion. Thank you.
It's tough as a Sierra Club if we're not hardline.
Come here.
If we're not hardline enough, we're too hardline. And a lot of what we do is just taking kids out who've never seen a crawdad before. And there's a big debate about civil disobedience right now, but you know, we've got to be careful. People don't necessarily want to put their kids into the wrong hands, and you know, it's a precarious position. But like you said, it's locally and county-wide been a successful thing. But as a chapter, we have a hard time with the moratorium position. But we have taken a stance on public lands, and these, the seep you can see coming up by well, a lot of these other shots are on wildlife management area lands in the Frozen Head State Park.
When you see the red stuff, that's iron bacteria that's growing because elements within the fracking wells are encouraging that kind of bacteria to grow.
A few of us just took the Society of Environmental Journalists for a tour in this area through Frozen Head State Park and North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area, which is just riddled with oil and gas wells. 12,500 wells we have in the state, and a lot of people don't even realize we're fracking at all.
So the iron bacteria you talked about, is that generated by petroleum organics?
The iron bacteria is generated, you know,
There's a
it's
connection, and
a
I'm
very
just
common thing to see around fracked wells, because when they're leaking, they're going to be encouraging a growth of a certain kind of bacteria, and that has it just has a terrible
The
look.
reason I'm
to it.
asking is I deal with that in my little stream that I take care of.
Oh, you are?
Watershed
Why is
area.
that a well?
This one particular stream is just dotted with
Right.
used car lots.
Right.
And misappropriated land use, like using them as junkyards and,
Yeah, there's a
fire
lot of junkyards
lots
that,
and-
look, there's a lot of junkyards and oil and gas sites.
Well, that's
that
what
all
I'm
of a
saying.
sudden
I
turn
wonder
into
if it's
subdivisions,
Petroleum-based
Right?
bacteria.
And nobody knows that there was a junkyard there, and you've got residual contamination
Right.
that seeps out. And
Yes, up
people don't
there.
know they're living on top of a toxic waste dump because they're not required to disclose that information. So that doesn't surprise me, that you have that kind of
Well,
activity.
the Metro Water, when I spoke to, is, oh, that's naturally occurring, and I
Well,
didn't believe it, because
Right.
I'm a water resource scientist, but
Right.
I'm not that familiar with that
Right.
particular
Well,
orange stuff.
It's something I see quite a lot of in fracked wells, especially in the south. I saw a lot of that in Arkansas. There's material on that in the bonus features of Gasland 1 on the DVD.
Okay.
But there's a relationship between iron bacteria and it's called the heterotrophic plate count of those wells is encouraged, and it's either by the methane itself or I'd have to look it up. But,
Or it
but
could be the other VOCs that are.
it could be the VOCs
They're
as well.
putting in the ground.
That is encouraging the bacteria.
Interacting with the
And
bacteria.
that is naturally occurring, but the source of that
It's the interaction.
interaction is not natural. What we saw, for example, in Dunkard Creek in West Virginia, where we had a 40-mile fish kill that went through West Virginia and Pennsylvania. The gas company said, oh, it's just an algae bloom. Well, the algae bloom happened because the creek went up 3 times the salinity of ocean water because they were dumping ocean water. Well, because they said, oh, the coal mines are draining into the creek. Well, no, it wasn't that. It's that they were dumping fracking waste, which is very high salt content, into the coal mines. That was seeping into the streams, and the stream bloomed with this golden algae, killed off everything in the entire creek for 40
This
miles.
naturally occurring is a very vague thing that they often
And
say, but
you-
that's how they're hiding it.
Just remember that when people were dying of lung cancer, the tobacco industry would come out and say it's naturally occurring. And they did all sorts of stuff with universities involved to show how it was all just naturally occurring. So this is a favorite little game that they play. When you call something naturally occurring, like when Tom Ridge goes on Stephen Colbert and says, oh, it's naturally occurring methane.
I feel
Well,
like
yeah,
we should
there is
act-
methane that occurs naturally. It's occurring naturally in all of you right now. Those of you who had Taco Bell, it's occurring more.
And that's
And that you might argue that that's not natural. But what I'm saying is that there is, the funny thing about natural gas is it does occur naturally. However, how did it get there and what concentrations did it get there? Was it there before? Is this a process that is now harming people's health and harming people's ability to use their water? That is always a different story. They love to hide behind this. What you've got to understand is that every source of information, including this, you have to check and double check and check and double check. And very importantly, you have to check the source of it. Because if it comes from the industry or it comes from some place that was a nonprofit that's masquerading as something, you have to check their funding sources. The Groundwater Protection Council sounds pretty benign, right? They came out with lots of reports on groundwater, sponsored by the industry. They will come out constantly and tell you that everything about this is safe. But it's the Groundwater Protection Council. Well, you have to check their funding sources. It's very difficult. In most of these cases, and I've been doing this for 5 years, you just rely on the citizens. What are the citizens saying? What are they seeing?
Right.
What's common sense? What makes sense? Every once in a while, yeah, sure, some of those things will be a false positive. But most of the time, if citizens are getting alarmed, there is something that's changed and there is something that's wrong and it's worthy of investigation. Right here.
It's easy to preach to the choir. Help me to preach to the sinner on the street who says, I need gas for my car to get to work. I've got to make a living. I got to raise my family, feed my kids. I got to heat my home. The company that I work for needs gas to produce the products that they're producing, or I'm not going to have a job. What do you tell these people?
Well, I think what you have to do is you say, look, we have a standard of living in the United States of America right now. A lot of the time the fossil fuel industry will say to you, we need to keep all the things that you just said, to maintain our standard of living, to maintain our jobs and everything. It's actually the opposite. It's actually the opposite. The more we do this, the more our standard of living degrades. The more we do this, the more dependent we are on foreign multinational corporations that are actually stealing our wealth from under us. A county that has no water, a county that has polluted water, has no more viable resource base for its economy. An economy is based on on a healthy environment. From every standpoint, whether it's agriculture or tourism or basic quality of life so people want to live there. When you have these foreign multinationals coming in, destroying that environment, taking the money and running, and that's what they're doing. They're degrading that quality of life. When you invest in renewable energy, the energy sources that are clean, that are actually going to be sustaining of the future. Every $1 million invested in natural gas creates 3.8 jobs. Every $1 million invested in wind and sun creates 9.5 or 9.8 jobs respectively. Plus you're now increasing the wealth of that community because you have something there that stays in the community, that is serviced by union employees, that is now making homes worth more, and you can heat your home and you can do all of those things with renewable energy. What we need to do is to get into the hands of people the tools for that transition. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. One of the things that we want to do on the jobs question, I'm making a short piece on workers. Workers are being devastated working in the oil field. You're 7 times more likely to die working for the oil and gas industry than you are for any other industry in the United States. 7 times the death rate. Why? Well, a lot of it's truck accidents. And by the way, it's not just accidents that involve the oil and gas workers. A lot of those accidents also involve civilians. So you have this astronomical rise in fatalities on our roads when you have 1,000 truck trips per well running in and out of these fracking sites. And that piece will be out in January, so show that, because you got a lot of oil and gas workers. I focused on a family whose son died, who was working on a well pad in New York from West Virginia, and their story. But a lot of these workers are also being told to handle toxic waste. They're breathing in those toxic chemicals on the sites day and night. The truckers are not being told that they're transporting radioactive wastes, that they're being sent onto pads to squeegee off the pads and siphon off that waste, and they're wading in it, and they don't know that that's all the fracking chemicals that went down the wells, all the VOCs, and that stuff is radioactive. So these guys are having massive health problems. When I talked to Theo Colborn in Colorado, who was the #1 reporter on these chemicals, she said, if my son told me he was going to go to war in Iraq or work for the oil and gas industry, I would tell him to go to war in Iraq, because that's how dangerous she felt these jobs were. Think about what that's doing to the community that these places are in. So you can't just say, at a certain point, a job and the economy can't be the only, there has to be a moral standard. You can't just say, oh, we're chopping heads off of kittens in this factory, and therefore, well, I have a job. You have to start to say, is this a job worthy of somebody in our community? Is this a job worthy of a human being? And if it's not, then what are the jobs, the safe jobs, the union jobs, the electricians, the people who are putting up the windmills, the people who are putting solar panels on roofs or in fields that are increasing the value of the community, that are getting the community off that type of dependency? Are those few oil and gas jobs, which are toxic and harmful and fatal at a rate of 7 times more than any other job, are they edging out the renewable energy jobs that we should be having, the clean energy jobs that are the future of the United States of America? So we have to start to figure out that the more we do this, the greater, people have a big truck or a Dodge Charger or some terrifically awesome car. Where are they going to drive it? Probably to the national park. Probably to some trout stream somewhere. That's where they probably want to go with it. If we don't start switching over to the electric cars, to the other sources of fuel, there's not going to be those places to go to. So you have to start to put this in perspective, I think. That's what I would say. And it has to be a change that takes root all over the United States. So when we petition to the president or petition to the governor, what we're saying is, no fracking, ban fracking. But also, there is no ban on fracking, there is no ban on mountaintop removal until we start to replace these fuels. Until we start to transform our energy system to something that's much more clean, more efficient, and more democratic. Because when that solar farm is in your town controls it. ExxonMobil doesn't control it. That energy goes to your houses. It doesn't come from the Persian Gulf or somebody suffering in the Gulf of Mexico or somebody suffering in Pennsylvania or in Tennessee.
So you bring up the issue of worker health safety. Having been around an insane amount of active gas wells and either setting things on fire yourself or watching others do it from close proximity, have you had any health problems, or you?
No, I mean, I don't think so. Maybe related to stress.
Okay.
No, I mean, but the stress of doing this has been pretty immense. But no, I have not around those places. However, long enough. John Fenton, who you see this incredible Wyoming cowboy, he's got no hair right now. All of his hair on his head fell out, and his eyebrows, and his beard, and we're really, really worried about him and his family having effects from breathing in a lot of this all the time. Many people in the film's health effects continue to get worse. We just saw the Parr family. They are now back at home, injecting themselves with a combination of serotonin and gamma globulin when they have a release nearby their house. So they're with syringes all the time. Bob Parr told me that he has a gamma globulin packet on a time release in his stomach, which helps his blood absorb oxygen because they're so depleted from oxygen. There are health studies that are ongoing right now, one in New York, the Colorado School of Public Health, that's another one that you can look up. This is a major issue, and also a major important thing to say to governors. They're saying, look, you're going to put public health on the line here. You better study this before you do anything that could affect our population. So, as we continue, and Calvin Tillman, opposite story. Moved out of Dish, got his family out of harm's way. His children's health effects disappeared virtually overnight. And when we were in Texas last week, he got up in front of everybody and said, look, we made the right choice. He's not the mayor anymore. I wanted to run for mayor somewhere else, or congressman. But his kids are in much better health. And, that was a move that they had to make. Now, as we get further down this line, remember, we're at a certain number we're at the infancy of this campaign. They're planning 1 to 2 million wells throughout the United States. You're not going to be able to move very many places to get away from the effects of either mountaintop removal or fracking or extreme energy of some kind without us taking a stand on this. But I just want to be encouraging here, though, for a second. The Damascus Citizens for Sustainability, who sounded the alarm bell, who got the gas company eventually out of the Delaware River Basin, were 9 people. 9 people. They were smart, and they were really connected, and they went out, and they never said die, and they got themselves connected with all the organizations that were in the area. They found a way into New York City. These were 9 people who just were scared to death. They're my neighbors. But there were 9 people, and they chose to meet, 3 times a week, and they were on the phone the other nights, and they were sending each other 25 emails a day. I finally said, guys, stop sending me emails. I can't take it anymore. But, they just refused to quit. And that group of people changed the world and changed the situation in the Delaware River Basin. So even though, look, we would rather have a crowd of 1,000 people, pictures tonight, we don't need that to make this change. It will happen if you can continue to really work on this. From a standpoint, a very small group of people can do this and make a huge effect. Yeah.
Is HBO still showing Gasland?
HBO, I don't know. Gasland 1 is easy to get on Amazon. It's like $2 to rent it. It's also on YouTube, which I'm not supposed to
It went
tell
off
you.
on demand.
It's on YouTube. On demand, it's not. Gasland 2 or Gasland 1 is not on demand anymore.
Gasland 2 went off on demand. You can still get it on HBO Go.
HBO Go. I don't have HBO actually. They told me to stop saying that on the road. But there are lots of ways to get the first movie. It's on Netflix. It's streaming on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can watch it anytime.
I've got a copy.
She's got a copy.
Well, it's not.
We will send you either movie to do your community screenings. And Gasland 1 is on YouTube. There's 50 people who put it up. You can watch it with Polish subtitles. You can watch it with French subtitles. You can watch it in French, dubbed. You can watch 20-minute versions of it. You can watch, 10-second versions of it. There are people who've made mashups of that first movie over and over and over and over again. And you can distribute those. We're also working on a school curriculum, which kind of combines both of the two for high school students. So that's something that you can look forward to. But Gasland 1, I don't know if it's still on HBO. I think they have it through January. The DVD of Gasland 2 comes out in January. So it may be possible to have Gasland 1 on local TV stations if local TV stations want to buy it, starting in January, I think. Because it's HBO's license runs out.
Josh, I just want to say something. I just would like to thank you for your arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner.
Thank you.
I think it's called the Star Spangled Banjo.
Star Spangled Banjo.
And that's one thing. But
thanks.
The movies that you've made and tours that you've taken and the influence and the momentum that you've built has really helped all of us. I mean, it's just helped the whole world in large ways. But so my question to you is, what can we do to help you?
You know what I would really love to see. Well, first of all, you're doing it. I think what we have to do is continue to be organized and be focused on winning and be focused on the fact that every piece that we do is moving us closer to the reality of living without fossil fuels. And when I say that, at first I thought this was like a kind of pie in the sky ideal. But now that I realize that what's happening here is human rights violations, what's happening here is a lockdown on our ability to interact with our own government. It's supposed to be a democracy. I don't believe we can have democracy going forward without freedom from fossil fuels. That's how I feel about it after 5 years of looking at this. And starting with just a knock at the door like, what are you talking about? I don't know. And now I'm in this place where having looked at this for so long, I don't believe we can have democracy without freedom from fossil fuels. I think they're tampering with the system so much, on so many ways that matter so much to so many people, that that's what's at stake here. It's not just our health and our environment, it's our form of representative government. So keep doing what you're doing and organize. I would say do whatever makes the most sense to you. Like I'm not an organized person. I can't organize a sock drawer. You know, I don't even have a sock drawer. But I can make a movie. So that's how I went into this. You know, and editors are tearing their hair out, like, where's that clip? I can't understand how you filed this system. I'm like, there is no file. I just, you know, it's over here, and I think the one's over there. You know, so I'm not that person to be an organizer. These are your great organizers here, or maybe you are. I would love to see some of these incredible musicians weigh in Tennessee. You know, I'd love to see a concert against Frack. I come and play the Star Spangled Banjo. I've played with Pete Seeger. I played with Natalie Merchant. You know, I'd be super excited to have that kind of effort happen. I think we need it in Appalachia, not just to focus on mountaintop removal, as we've had many concerts, but also Willie Nelson and Farm Aid and Dave Matthews just came out and did all this anti-fracking stuff at Farm Aid when it was in New York. Cool. You know, it was awesome. You should look at the videos. But you know, I think that we're here in Nashville. This is a music town. Music is so important in all of this. Culture is so important in all of this. So if there's some way you guys can work on directing that, calling out for that, figuring that out, we'll be back here in the blink of an eye to help figure it out with you. If there's a move to do that, if you need us to make phone calls to try to reach out to some of the people, we were listening to Gillian Welsh all the way over here from Arkansas this afternoon. You know, big fans of this music from this area. I think that there's something that could be done in that way. I don't know. Maybe everybody says that to you. But I'm thinking about New York cares so much about its unfiltered water supply. It was about our unfiltered water supply. It was our water. You know, what do you have here? You have mountains. What do you have here? You have this amazing tradition of music. Is there a way to bind these things together? You have coal mining songs. There are no good gas fracking songs. They're all terrible. There's very not, people send them to me all the time. They're just, we need some heavy hitters coming in with that, you know. Is there a way that we can combine that incredible tradition of music that comes out of, so much of that comes out of that extractive mining? Can we find a way into that conversation here? I don't know, that's my fantasy of it. Go ahead.
Can you elaborate on your arrest and if there were any other bureaucracies that you've had to navigate as a filmmaker
Sure.
covering these issues?
Well, I've been arrested a bunch of times. Mostly because of protest. And this time, you know, and a time with it was an organized action. I tell you something, getting arrested some places really is terrible. It's like you're down in the catacombs of New York City with crackheads and people who just beat up their girlfriend and guards who were screaming in your face. And there was one time I was in a cell with somebody who tried to kill himself by ripping his basketball jersey in half and, you know, tying it to the top of the bars and looked at me and said, if you say anything, I'm going to kill you. But the best place to get arrested in the world is in the Capitol. It's totally cushy. You know, nothing's going on there. I was the only person in there. The only person in there was like, you know, like a day off. You know, like I said in the film, you know, didn't have to answer my cell phone. And they held me for 2 hours and let me out. And so I would really recommend, if you're going to get arrested, do it in the Capitol, in D.C. Because there's nobody smoking crack, well, in the halls of Congress. Maybe. Of course, nobody's in them. Maybe I think they are. But they're not arresting those people. But what I'm saying is, just cracking up back there. So there were no repercussions. In fact, they released it, they dismissed it. The only thing that really happened was I spent the next 3 days on television talking about this. So it was a big loss on their score. So sometimes, even though I hadn't planned on that action, I had a plan if it came to that. You know, we thought they were going to cave and realize they should just let us film because nobody's going to pay attention to it except later when we show the film. We wanted this hearing as the end of our film. We wanted this hearing. We wanted to watch the United States Congress in the Science Committee attack science, which is exactly what they did. They went out and bold-faced attacked science. It was outrageous. As it was, they done it was just attack science. They attacked journalism, they attacked the Constitution, and they did that on a full display. And it was a big story at the time. Like, I didn't expect anyone to pay attention to it. When I got out, I had a text message from a friend that said, "You're at the top of Reddit. You own the internet." And we had knocked Mitt Romney off the top of Huffington Post. It was Mitt Romney, and then there was a picture of me, journalist, arrested in D.C. like that. You know, and that was a big story. So it really backfired on them. So there are consequences, grave consequences, and it certainly matters who you are and what you look like, because the majority of people in those jail cells are not white, and the way they treat you is about that in most of those systems. And that there's serious. You want to find out about inequality in this country or the way race works in this country, end up in jail, and you'll find out quickly. But the point is that I do endorse doing actions of nonviolent civil disobedience. And if you really want it to be a very pleasant experience, do it in the Capitol.
That's a big t-shirt.
Yeah. So, why don't we take one or two more questions? It's been a long, beautiful night, and we'll quit. Do you want to get an update from your incredible activists here who can tell you what's going on here in Tennessee? I would like to hear that. Can you guys give us a sense of how to get involved, what's happening right now, what's the next moment that people can start to work on?
I'd like to say a couple of things. We got a lot of good stuff going right now. Thank you all for coming out. Our public lands position is a really big push. Please check out that map out there from Southern Environmental Law Center. They've been amazing. We've had an incredible victory on the UT front. I don't know how many of you have been keeping up with it, but UT trying to open up the forest they hold in trust for the public, went up for bid for a fracking project, and not one company bid on it. A lot of groups have been coming together on that, and it's a really good example of what we've seen in others. There's a lot of momentum building, a lot of groups really starting to work together more, and that's what has to happen. Like I said, we just did a tour of public lands, and any other groups that would like to go out and see this, we're more than happy to take you out and show you some of these wells on our public lands. And we're really getting geared up for water monitoring. We're about to drop a few thousand on some probes, and really on a lot of these wells, some of the best traction is just hitting a bunch of them in a day, just with pictures, seeing all the erosion on the pads. And we don't have a lot of huge wells in this state. We have a monitoring or regulation system set up for notification and water monitoring if they go over the 200,000 gallon mark, but we don't have a single well in Tennessee that goes over that mark. So it's a pretty bad situation in that respect. And there's a lot that citizens can do in monitoring that. We're pushing it in many respects on many fronts. We've got some great students, and we're really looking for more interns. We're about to be buying the database of all permits in Tennessee and really crunching some data, turning it into some good GIS maps, and allow us to work with other groups on staying on top of these wells and looking for violations. And we'll always need more people helping out with citizen monitoring in that respect. So we're really trying to gear up, and we can use all the support that we can get. Thank you so much, and be sure to check out our calendars and t-shirts and stuff up front. These water monitoring equipment is not cheap.
Let me just say, the reason why we monitor these wells is because it's our goal to cost these industries as much money as possible for destroying our natural habitats and stuff. If we make it too costly for them to keep doing it, they won't keep doing it.
We just had 70 people protesting the Keystone Pipeline last weekend. We're firing on all fossil fronts, but like they were saying, we've got to have a better way. That's the Sierra Club's motto, there is a better way. We got people working real hard on renewables, and my girlfriend who just spoke, her parents are just one of the many people I know, staunch conservatives, but they're on a waiting list waiting for solar panels that they can't put up because we've reached the capacity the TVA will allow for new solar generation just a few months into the year this year. And then when they decide to re-release a little more in August, it's sold in a few hours. So it's tough because our governor's family owns the only gas station authorized to retrofit for natural gas pumps, and we're up against a lot. We're up against a lot, and we need to come together.
Yeah, and so some other stuff that we would really like to do. We have this really crappy unitization law in Tennessee that allows a gas company to drill under your land if 50% of your neighbors say it's okay. So say there's 10 people, if 5 of them say it's okay, the other 5 of them just have to deal with it. And if they didn't say okay in the beginning, they can not maybe get the payouts of the original people or the good deal. And so some stuff that we would like to really do as we're doing some of this water monitoring and air monitoring and such is really get out in the communities and start meeting people. I want to put together ways to do that. We have one person we've met who, his name's Terry Brewster. He came to our Fractivist conference, and he had this great water well, and then they fracked under his land, and now his water well is absolutely disgusting. And that's one case. I'm sure there's plenty of them, and will continue to be more if we don't stop that. So that's one of the things, meeting these people and actually getting them involved. That's how y'all been so successful in other places, is that the impacted landowners have gotten involved in this fight. And so that's some stuff that we really need to push for. On the legislative end, we want to push for stronger unitization rules so that it's harder for them to just come in there and say, hey, well, your neighbor said that it was cool, like you should say it's cool, we'll give you lots of money. We want to figure out what they're saying, and then we can get in there and educate the community about what they're saying so that they know what to listen for, and they know when they're being kind of played, which is probably all the time. And so we're working on that. We're going to petition for new rules because our rules in this state are, pardon my language, shitty, and a multiple other things. So there's so many things to do on this front. And we need more hands, and I hate to talk about money, but we need money. I mean, if we're going to do this, we need you guys to get out and talk to everyone all your connections. We need to fundraise like crazy. We need to buy all sorts of air and water monitoring equipment. We need to be able to fund the gas that it takes for all of us to take off from our jobs and run to East Tennessee and meet all these people and do all this stuff and lobby until we can't breathe anymore. And so that's something that's really important. I mean, you can grab some shirts and stuff from us tonight. It's ongoing, but these are the things we need to do, and it's not fun to talk about, but it's reality. So thanks you guys so much. I mean, oh my goodness, yeah.
I think one thing we need to do too is keep an eye on Colorado. I'm sure we've all seen the pictures of all the wells and those tanks and stuff in the river, which is their primary source of drinking water. And because any gas lines that we've got close to the river, we have that possibility.
This is a huge problem.
Yes.
And we've been tweeting out pictures from Shane Davis at Fracktivist. His website is fracktivist.org, I think. They've been flying over this huge flood in Colorado, flooded the red zone that you saw in Gasland 1. That's an area where there's 20,000 oil and gas wells. And hundreds, if not thousands of them were hit by that huge flood. And it gives you a visualization, if you look up at some of those photographs, of what's actually happening under the ground, where all those wells are drilled and leaking. Because you see now this water on top of the ground, where all these wells are flooded and leaking. And it's really terrifying. Now, when people came to me and said, oh, they didn't prepare for that, well, that's not true. The oil and gas industry prepared for that, just not the way that you wanted them to. They went out and got exemptions from the stormwater runoff provisions of the Clean Water Act. So they were prepared for the flood. They're prepared to be not liable under the Clean Water Act. They did that under Reagan. So when you're looking at these things, these are extraordinarily important. President Obama said that he didn't believe they should be doing fracking and without being subject to the Clean Water Act. He has not stood by that. That was a campaign promise in 2008. These are the fundamentals of how to keep your community safe, and they're exempt from those things. Don't tell me they care about what you're doing. Don't tell me they care about your community when you watch what just happened in Colorado. And don't also kid yourself that these kinds of floods are not going to be on the way for all of us.
We just had our
Irene
2,000
and
years.
Sandy,
In 3 years.
second 1,000-year flood in 3 years.
Yep.
Irene and Sandy were devastating to upstate and downstate New York and central Pennsylvania. We had flooding in the Marcellus Shale that washed lots of contamination into that environment. These are the things that they're now exempt from. These are the basics of the laws and the rules that these guys are talking about.
Look behind you. This is a fire 100 yards from a well right by Frozen Head State Park that we saw earlier this year. I mean,
so
it's a national security issue. The average citizen paid $500 to $1,000 for disaster relief in taxes last year.
So I want to turn this over to the man who started us off to bring us home and say thank you so much for all of you coming out tonight. And listen, before we stop, just so you know, this stuff is depressing. It's upsetting, it's depressing, it's horrible, it makes you want to kill yourself. Don't do that. We're really happy that you're watching this movie as a group, It's like Gasland 2, don't watch it alone. You know what I mean? Like Psycho, don't watch it alone. You'll never take a shower the same way again, And in the same way, when you're dealing with this, you can't deal with this stuff alone. You have to deal with this in teams, you have to deal with this as a community, you have to come together, and that is an amazing feeling. When you're actually working with the people who live near you, I've met every neighbor that I ever had. I didn't know I had them. I've met neighbors in Tennessee. I've met neighbors in France. I've met neighbors in the Czech Republic. In South Africa, in Australia. This is a huge community working on this. You're not alone when you're doing that. Don't try to handle it or even think about it alone. When this is so troubling to you in the middle of the night, call somebody and wake them up in the middle of the night. Be like, I gotta talk to you about fracking. They'll be like, go away. You'll be like, no. You know what I mean? This is an enormous opportunity to make friends and influence people. And it can be an extremely positive, joyful event to do that. And you, I would never trade the friend. I don't want to say thank you to the gas industry at all, because I would much rather be doing something else. But the people I've met doing this are some of the most amazing people, and I wouldn't trade those friendships and those bonds and those relationships for anything. So go out and find that, and it will stave off the isolation, the depression, the fear, the suicidal feelings, and get you through to the next day. Because as this goes on, if we don't act, it's going to get worse. So I want to say thank you so much for being here. Turn it over for the last word. Thank you.
If y'all want something to do, coming up on October 19th is Global Frackdown Day.
That's right.
That has been called for by Food and Water Watch, an international day of action about fracking. We're going to have an action here in Nashville. We're going to be meeting down at Riverfront Park at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to take our 50-foot pipeline and all of our props and go up Lower Broadway, go over to the state capitol and back down. And it should be a fun day, so join us there. Thanks.
All right.
And that website is globalfrackdown.org. I just recorded a video for them, so it should be up there too. All right, thanks so much. See you next time.